Hi everyone, Chakradeep here, one of the program managers in SharePoint Experiences team. Today we're going to learn a lot about building no-code apps using Microsoft List, Power Automate, and Power Apps. In the context of collaborative work and content management, Microsoft 365 provides a powerful integrated toolset that covers you from the backend with storage built on SharePoint all the way to the front end, which may be an Office application like Teams, OneDrive, Microsoft List, Planner, To-Do. So there are various tools available here, starting with Files that allows you to share and manage content easily, to Tasks, where you can manage your personal and team tasks with apps such as To-Do and Planner, and of course, use Microsoft List to track a lot of different types of information, not just tasks. With Microsoft List, you can define the information you want to track and how you want to do it using very different scenarios and unique as you can get to track and manage those information. With communications such as mail and team-centric like audio and video, you can quickly connect with each other, with your colleagues, and also quickly schedule and attend meetings. So today we're going to see how you can use Microsoft List to easily handle multiple set of information, and as well as your ability to add business logic to notify users when information changes, create meaningful visuals of the data and the form, and share it with others as you build your application using Microsoft List. List provides a lot of user-friendly tools that you can use to make it work for you, and we will see them as well in our session today. Before we dive in, I want to quickly talk about empowering business process in Microsoft 365, especially with Microsoft List. As you saw, Microsoft List provides a set of really great interface for users to interact and build their business logic. It starts with providing value with native efficiency, providing value in the platform for you to collect, manage, and distribute content. And then it goes one step ahead to enable users to configure and make the list look like how they want it to be, so that it is very easy to organize the thing that your team creates about and cares about and must get done, right? And the third level we see is that users can take that to the next step by integrating with Power Platform and other services and build a really complex composed user experience that makes it simpler for users to understand what is going on with the list. With this continuum, we feel users have the opportunity to not only get the benefit out of the box with what Microsoft List provides, but also take that and transform into something very useful and meaningful for their users and for their team. So let's dive into the native efficiency piece. As we saw before, Microsoft List is simple, smart, and flexible, giving you all the options that you want to quickly create a list of things and then keep everyone in sync and customize it the way you want. It is not only available as an app in Microsoft 365, it is also available as part of Microsoft Teams app. So if you open Microsoft Teams, you will also be able to add and interact with lists inside your team. I'm not going to go deeper into all of these. There are other sessions that are diving deeper into each of the topics in the native efficiency that we saw about collect, manage, and distribute content. So I would highly recommend you to watch some of the other sessions that I have highlighted here to know more about what List is here to offer for end users. Today, however, in this session, we're going to dive deeper into the simple configuration and integrated solutions piece, because that helps you to take List to the next level. So it all starts with the schema and the form. They both help you to define what information you want to store in your list and what information you want to collect from your users. So the forms that comes with the list will provide you the ability to configure certain things so you can make it much more useful to your users. Today we have show, hide, and reorder columns, and as well as the ability to specify conditionally show or hide certain column based on an expression. The expression is very simple as an Excel-like formula. Beyond that, we are working on enabling users to configure the form header and a footer with your information that you might want to put, as well as customize the form body with sections. We believe both of these will allow you to configure the list form in a more visually appealing way that is easily understandable to your users. Beyond that, we are also looking to exploring options for doing the same, the header and a footer and a body with sections with a user interface. Today, you're going to get the JSON-based approach to configure the header and a footer, very similar to how we started column formatting and view formatting before, which is very centric to users that understand JSON language. But we are working to make sure that we can build UI on top of that, so it's even easier for end users to configure that. We're also looking at sharing forms. It's really easy for users to come into a list and start typing and entering information, but what if you want to share this form with somebody else to collect input? That's something we have top of mind that we are exploring. The next thing I want to talk about is rules. Rules really comes out with the fact that users want to track information and keep the team informed. We want to make this as simple as possible. And when we looked into how we can make this simpler, we sought out to a model where we can make it as simple as possible and as close as possible to how users think when they want to keep their team informed about changes. So rules very closely follows a natural language interpretation for helping you configure simple condition and an outcome. So for the first release, you're going to see us building notifications through rules that drives the ability for someone to create a rule and notify someone based on when a column changes, when a column value changes, a new item is created, and when an item is deleted. Oh, we'll see demos on that, but top of mind, this is a great start for us to simplify the interface to have end users configure the things they want for their team to be informed. We're going to take this further to enabling users to notify users in teams, as well as enabling users to create rules that can create tasks, which is very important when you think about the collaborative work and content management space. So with that, let's go and look at the demo of configuring the list form with header, footer, and a body, as well as creating and managing rules. So here's my favorite list. It's about a list tracking all of the new candidates that my team is recruiting. And we have made the list really pretty, right? So we have some formatting here with, status column being represented with different colors, as well as there's a photo for every candidate. We have some data bars showing us how many interviews the candidate has been completed through. And we also have a really easy way to contact the candidate by clicking this icon and opening up the mail app. So it's a really powerful list. Now you can see how it helps me to track information. Now, when I click on a candidate, you can see that it gives me a much more pleasing view of the form rather than the normal form that I would get in this list. And I have the opportunity to see that to put a header, which you can see I already have. And I've also put sections in this form to categorize different columns. So it makes me easier to tell this information when users come into this list and see, which is I want to see them the candidate name, I want to see them, there's a headshot and there's a status. And then I can talk about the interview. So I'm really focused on this section if I really want to get information about the interview. So it helps us to drive how we can configure this in a way that is meaningful to users. So let's see how I did that. So we have a button here that lets you to edit columns, configure layout, and customize Power Apps. So the configure layout will give you the options to actually configure and put your custom header, footer, and the body with sections. So as soon as I open this interface, you see I have the option to apply formatting. And in the header, you can see I have my JSON code that actually defines this header. Now, this JSON code isn't something new. If you're very familiar with how you format a column or a view in a list, that's exactly the code what we use here. As we release this feature, you will see us publishing some sample code for you to get started with. So if you still feel this is something new to you right now, things will get much clearer with samples as we release this feature to you very soon. And when I switch this to body, you can see that now I'm able to define the sections I want and the fields inside each of those sections. Now, this is a little bit different to the header because the header allowed you to put anything you want, whereas the body doesn't allow you to put anything you want, but rather create sections and add fields to it. And that's what I've done here. There's a default section here that you can see I have the exact field name the column name I see, which is candidate's headshot and status. And then I define another section called details and put in the candidate contact and the candidate details column. And then I have another last section, interview, and then put all of the interview details in here. So that's how I have configured this body with sections. Now, of course, you can configure your footer as well if you want to put something for the footer which would come below in the form. A nice way to maybe highlight a link that users want to click. But in this example, we see that we have a header and a body. So this is how now the form that was really boring has become something pleasing to your users and giving the details in a more constructive way so they can consume this information really very easily. Now, one of the things, if you notice, is that I had specified some of the columns here, like notes, but you don't see notes here. Rather, I do have it here in my configuration. So where did the notes column go? Well, this comes to our conditionally show height feature, right? So there is a way for you to now configure a column to be visible based on a condition. So if you go to the same button here, which is edit form and then edit columns, you will now get a view of all the columns. And you can see notes is disabled by default. Now, if we go here, I will get the option to edit conditional formula. And you can see here, I have defined that if status column is interview scheduled, or if status column is pending interview, I have set it to false, meaning that do not show the notes field, else true, which means show the notes field. So this is what is controlling that notes field visibility. So a good way to show is to create a new candidate, and then you can see the notes field showing and hiding based on the condition we set. So the notes field right now is showing because I haven't selected any option. Now, as soon as I select pending interview, you can see that the note field disappears. Maybe I don't want to have the notes field when there's an interview going on, right? But when I do pending feedback, you can see the notes field comes back because I do want the interviewer to provide feedback on the candidate. So a really easy way for you to manage the visibility of a column using these simple Excel-like expressions. Now let's move on to the rules. I want to have the team informed about some of the changes that happen here. So if you go to Automate, and you get the option for creating a rule and managing rules. If you click create a rule, you will get all of the options that we saw before about the notification. A column changes, a column value changes, a new item is created, and an item is deleted. So let's start with the column changes, right? So this gives you the ability to say which column you are interested in to keep informed about, right? So this gives you all the available columns in the list. And we can say, well, when the status column changes, I want to send an email. And you can always type in names, but the really cool thing that rules allows you to do is pick a column that has the people associated with it in your list, right? So maybe when the status changes, you want to update the interviewer, right? The interviewer could be anybody, but when the status changes for a particular candidate, the email will be sent to the interviewer that the status has been changed. Very useful, right? Now, if I want it to be sent to myself, I can do that as well with selecting the me. Or if I want to type in something other than the columns available, I can do that as well. And that's going to go ahead and search my directory and bring in people. Really, very helpful, right? So with all of these options, now I get to define the rule and the outcome, and also define who gets that in a very productive way with rules. Similar to column changes, we also have the ability to create a rule based on a column value. So this takes it to the next level of not only selecting the column you're interested in, but also setting on a specific condition, like when a value of the column is something, right? So when status is or is not, so it's really like intuitive enough for you to like understand what you're doing here. And it gives you all of the values available to you. So when status column is maybe no offer, right? I want to send the email to interviewer. So the interviewer understands that there was someone that was not given the offer, or not the offer was not extended to. So this helps you to even further take rules to be very specific about the changes that you want your users to be informed about. And this is also very specific to the type of the column, right? So the reason you're seeing is and is not the operations here is because status is a choice column and allows you to either say status is or is not. But if you think about a date column, then you get more options. So when the date is or is not, or is after, is between, which is my favorite. So then you can do like is between and then choose a date, and you can say either today or a specific date, right? So today is relative, so it will be always the day that this rule gets checked every day. And then you can select a specific date as well, right? So then you get a really specific rule where when the interview date is between this and October 1st, then you send an email to interviewer. So really great ways to configure these rules and help your team keep informed about the changes that happen. And obviously, once you create these rules, you can go into Automate, Manage Rules, and see the rules that you created. And these rules are available to all users. So the users that come to your list also see the rules available here, and maybe they want to tweak it. Maybe they just want to know what is going on that helps them to keep their team informed. They can go here and have a look. If you want to edit this, you click on the rule and you go through the same process how you edit this rule. And one of the good things about this page is it also shows who edited at last and when. So it gives you a really good information about who created this rule or edited this rule that was created last time. And if you want to delete the rule, you can click delete here, and that will delete the rule. So this is how you can easily manage the rules for your list and keep your users informed. To recap, we saw some demos how you can use Microsoft List tab to configure the form and to create rules to keep your team informed. Now we're going to see how you can extend further using Power Platform, the Power Automate, and Power Apps with your Microsoft List. This gives you great options to integrate with several other services within Microsoft, as well as outside the other business services that your organization may depend on, to orchestrate and build custom business apps. SharePoint Power Automate integrations offer you robust workflow orchestration for some of the key business logic and business scenarios you want to manage in SharePoint. So starting with creating personal reminders to be reminded about certain dates you have in your Microsoft list, to quickly requesting feedback or approval from your colleagues using the request sign-off flow, and also quickly requiring approvals for items and documents in your list and libraries. If you have a communication site that you have people authoring pages and publishing pages, you can require approval for those as well using the powerful, robust integration we have with Power Automate. If you are managing hub sites in SharePoint and want the ability to allow users to request to join to those hub sites because they are part of the organization or whatever reason they want to provide you, you can have the hub join approval flow manage that for you as well. If none of these scenarios are useful enough for you, but you want to create something very specific to your needs, you can do that as well with lots of templates that we have in the Power Automate website. The Power Automate integrations really start with the SharePoint Connector in Power Automate. The connector provides SharePoint-specific triggers and actions for you to interact with lists and libraries. Of course, today, if you are a Microsoft List app user and want to connect to the list that you just created using Microsoft List app, you will come to the SharePoint Connector in Power Automate and connect to that list. The SharePoint templates are available in the Flow portal for you also to quickly get started with building some workflow orchestration against your SharePoint data. Today, we have around 47 actions, 12 triggers counting. So we are making a lot of investment in providing users value with the triggers and the actions that we want them to build for orchestrating their business logic with Power Automate. So what's new with Power Automate integration? We're very happy to announce that we now have the ability for you to have a trigger based on just item modifications. We had triggers for item creation, but we never had this trigger that only monitors for item modification. And users had to use the trigger that was able to monitor both item creation and item modification, which made it really complex for understanding whether the change was based on item creation or item modification. So now you have a new trigger called when an item or a file is modified that lets you only track the modifications. Along with that, we also now have the ability to get changes for an item or a file specified in a specific interval or between versions. This helps you to really focus on the business logic to understand what got changed in that flow run. So with the when an item modified trigger and then with the get changes, now this enables very powerful scenarios for you to go build using Power Automate and SharePoint data. And some of the things that we released a few months back that is live today is support for folders. Now you can select a folder and run a flow against it. This is something we didn't have earlier, but now we have that support. So you don't have to go into the folder, select every individual item or a file and run the flow. Instead, you can come out, select the folder, and then you can run a flow. And in that flow, you can enumerate the items inside that folder and let's say start an approval for each of those items. It just makes it easier now, given that you can run in a folder for your flow. We also have support for lookup columns in get items action. If you are wondering how to use them, you just have to specify the name of the lookup column as a filter value, and you will be able to filter items specifically for the lookup columns in your list. We also have large file support. When you create files, if the file is within the limits of SharePoint library limits, which is, I think, 2 GB, you will be able to transfer those using the create file action as well. And of course, we have GCC and GCC High are now live with all of the SharePoint integrations with Power Automate, which is also awesome. Users get to use these in those environments as well. So let's quickly look at the new trigger when an item or a file modified and how you can get changes for an item or file in the same process, a demo around that. So here we are with the new candidates list. Earlier, we saw how you can quickly create a rule to notify someone when the status of the candidate changes to no offer, right? So if I go here and click manage rules, you will see the rule that we created here. Now we're going to go beyond this and use a Power Automate flow to send the interviewer a Teams message when the status changes to offer extended. So to do that, I'm going to show you what this looks like and then go into the flow of how it is built. So I'm going to go to this candidate Flora and then change the status to offer extended. And that's going to save. And this is going to trigger the flow, check the status value to see if it's offer extended, and then send a Teams message to the interviewer. And the interviewer here is Nestor, the same user that I've logged in this browser. So let me switch to Teams and see if I have the message from the flow. And here you are. I indeed have a message here that shows candidate offer extended, and here's the candidate's name, Flora, and also a really nice message telling me about that the offer has been extended, and I can click here to view candidate details. And if I click here, it's going to open the browser right to the candidate item form. So really simple way now to take the experience, what you see in Microsoft List, and orchestrate in a Power Automate flow and drive the business logic you want. So how does this look in the flow? Let's switch to the flow tab and look at the flow logic. So here's my flow. I'm going to edit this flow. And you can see it's a really simple flow that says when an item or a file is modified, get changes for that item. I'm going to see if the status column has changed. If it is changed, I want the value of the status column, so I get the item, and then I check if the status is offer, if the status value is offer extended. If it is, I'm going to show an adaptive card. That's the flow that I have built here. Now let's get into what the trigger and action look like. So when an item or a file is modified, just like any other trigger, you get the site address, and then you get to specify the list or library name. You can notice here I'm using my personal site because the list I created is a personal list. So in your flow, if you want to connect to your personal list, you can specify the personal site URL, and then that will let the trigger give you all of the lists available in your personal site. And you can see here I have a lot of lists, but the ones that I'm interested in is new candidates. And then what I'm doing is I'm going to check what got changed, right? So I'm using the same list, and then I specify the ID because I want to know for that particular item for which this flow run is executing, I want to know changes. I want to see if there are changes. And the interval that I want to specify is I'm getting an input from the trigger, because this trigger, when an item or file is modified trigger, gives you some tokens. And this token gives you the last time the flow checked for changes for this particular list. So with that information, you get a start token and an end token, and that gives you the ability to, based on the flow's logic of when it checked for changes with this list, gives you the ability to use that and infer what changes happened on the list. Now, one of the important things here, if you click on the information icon, you will see that the list must have versioning turned on. Yes, for you to track information and infer what columns changed, we use versioning behind the scenes. So you should have your versioning turned on. And how further you have your versioning, so let's say you want to store only 4 versions, then you can only go 4 versions back. If you only store 1 version, then you only go 1 version back. So it's really, I would recommend you to give a thought around how many versions or how many information you want to go back against, and then define the versioning, and then come back to this flow and understand how that impacts your business logic and set the versioning accordingly. But the key important message here is that you need to have the versioning turned on. So now this helps me set up my flow. So when an item or file is modified, and then how I get the changes for that item. And now the get changes action, you can see here, provides an easy way for me to see if a column has changed. So you can see the format here, has column changed, colon, the column name, right? So it's a Boolean value. So this tells me that, for example, the one that we are focused on has column change status, right? So that's what I have here. This is going to give you true or false. If it's true, that means the column has changed. Great. So now I put in here, has column changed is equal to true. That means the status column has changed. And then now I want to know what's the value of the status column. So I use the get item action to get the details about that particular ID, which is the particular candidate. So now I can check if the status value is equal to offer extended, and then send a message to the user in Teams. Now you can see here, I'm using the action that allows me to post an adaptive card to the user. Adaptive card helps me to design the way I want, that is more pleasing to my users, and also have formatting that can have links and whatnot. Now, if you want to use just a message rather than the adaptive card, if you click add an action and then select the Teams, you will see a lot of options here to do that as well. So for example, there is post a message, and as well as there is post a message as a flow bar to a user. So you get the options to not just stick with adaptive card, but if you're really want to something really simple, you get that option as well in Power Automate. So this is how simple it is now to understand an item or a file was modified, and then you get the changes and check which columns got modified, and you can have your business logic to focus on the specific column you're interested in, and then get the changes and see what's the value. If the value is something that matches your business logic, do the things that you want to do. So this is the new when an item or a file is modified trigger with the get changes for an item or a file action. So to recap, we saw how we can use Power Automate to orchestrate some of the business logic you have and keep your team informed. Now we're going to look at how you can use SharePoint Power Apps to even take it further, maybe build an app that works with the list data and share it with your users. So SharePoint Power Apps integration has three key pieces of integration today. We integrate with the list form, so you can build your own custom form. We also have the ability to build a Power App, a standalone Canvas app that connects to list data, as well as we have the Power Apps web part that allows you to embed the Power Apps in a SharePoint page and connect and display or render the Power App that you are connecting to. So all of these three options provide robust and efficient ways for you to share the app as well as connect and interact with SharePoint list data through Power App. So what's new with Power Apps? There is the delegation support that was one of the key features that many customers have asked for. So date delegation is really about the ability to query items from the list and filter them with a specific date range, right? So previously when you do this, it was giving you a result and basically an error saying that, or a warning saying that this does not delegate, and we will bring all the rows from the list and then filter it in the client, which was not efficient. So we fixed that. So today, if you go to your Power App Studio and edit the app that you were previously using to filter items based on a date range or a date, you will no longer see the warning. The Power App Studio will understand that you are using date and will now go and fetch the items from the server, from SharePoint, for the specific filter value that you have defined. It's a really good way and really improves the performance for many scenarios for many customers. We also provided delegation support for secondary lookup columns, which also makes it much efficient enough when you are filtering items. We have now support for parameters in web part. That's something that it's going to come soon, so that in the web part that you embed in the SharePoint page, when you specify the Power Apps URL, you can suffix with the query parameters and then capture those query parameters in your app and do something very specific. So an example I always give is that if you embed the web part on a specific site, you can maybe pass in the site relative URL to the app so it can do something dynamic in nature when the app gets loaded on that page. We have done a lot of performance and reliability fixes along with, same as enabling the Power Apps integration in GCC and GCC high environments. So let's look at a demo for date delegation support and understand how it works. So here's my Power App that I built and connected to the same new candidates list. So you can see it has given me the ability to create a phone screen. So maybe I want my users in Move to go open the Power Apps app and use this app instead of the list. And here, if I click my gallery control, you can see it brings all of the information from my list. But one of the things you can see here that I have done is it's filtering with the new candidates list where next interview date is less than 2020 September and 01, the date. So this does not have a squiggly warning anymore. This is directly filtering the items from the list for this date, and it gives you all the items back. So to show you that this is really going to work, I'm going to now change the logic to, let's say, greater than September, right? So as soon as I do that and then enter, you should see the Power App now loading, and there you go. If I close the screen, you can see now all of the items here are the items beyond September 1, right? So the date column here is on the list, and the filter is happening on the list and then bringing the items back. So it is that simple. As a maker, you just have to go and edit the formula, and the platform manages the rest. Now, some of the things that I do want to highlight here with respect to improvements to the Power App Studio is you have some right-click options now. So if you right-click on a text block, for example, you get the option to change the font and color and whatnot just right there in the context of the text box control. So you don't have to go to the ribbon here and change it. Really nice way to interact with the form. You can also reorder the controls right here and align them as well, so you don't have to go to the ribbon again. Now, another important thing that we heard a lot of feedback from customers is that if you want to modify something in the form, you can see that it actually shows you that it's locked. And what users had to do was they had to go to advanced and then click on this unblock to change properties. We know this is quite tiresome, so what we did was if you right click on that control, now you get unlock. So when you click unlock, now your card is unlocked, and now you can go ahead and change the form sections right there. So really nice ways. You will see us even going further and giving experiences and simplifying experiences in many of the form input areas to make this much more easier for users to edit. So those are some of the new changes that you will see in Power Apps with respect to SharePoint integration. It was nice meeting you all virtually in this session, and I hope you got a lot out of this session to understand how to build no-code apps with Microsoft List, Power Apps, and Power Automate. I hope to see you soon, and until then, goodbye.